delighted to introduce this year's Gala keynote speaker, Anurima Bhargava. Anurima is the founder and president of Anthem of Us, a strategic advisory and consulting firm that promotes dignity and justice and centers equity and belonging in workplaces, schools, and communities. Anthem of Us works in collective with multiple partners to advise foundations, media and arts organizations, civil and human rights organizations, schools, and companies. She chaired and continues to serve on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. She was appointed to the commission in December 2018 by Speaker Nancy Pelosi and has traveled to Burma, the Rohingya camps in Bangladesh, Iraq, Sudan, and Vietnam to document and monitor religious conditions. Anurima led federal civil rights enforcement and policy in schools and institutions of higher education at the U.S. Department of Justice during the Obama administration. She served on several administration-wide and White House task forces to address racial and sexual violence, diversity, equity, harassment, and discrimination. Before joining the Justice Department, she directed the education practice at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, where she litigated cases on diversity, equity, and segregation in schools and institutions of higher education, including in the federal appellate courts and the U.S. Supreme Court. From 2016 to 2018, she served as a fellow at the Institute of Politics and the Carr Center for Human Rights at Harvard, and as the inaugural Leadership in Government Fellow at Open Society Foundation, where her work focused on trauma experienced within communities after incidents of racial violence. Anurima is deeply committed to advancing justice through narrative and storytelling. She advises and produces documentary films and projects and chairs the U.S. Board of Doc Society, a leading incubator and supporter of documentary film globally. Anurima co-chairs the National Advisory Board on Public Service at Harvard and serves on the boards of the National Women's Law Center Action Fund and Poverty Race Research Action Council. She serves as an advisor to Unbound Philanthropy, GSV Ventures, and the Broadway Advocacy Coalition. She is a 2017 Presidential Leadership Scholar and has been a member of the Truman National Security Project and the Council on Foreign Relations. Lastly, Anurima advises numerous political campaigns and was appointed to the 2020 DNC Platform Committee. She founded Take Back Tuesdays and Anthem of America to provide information and ways to take action around elections, and recently co-founded a multiracial PAC, American Anthem. Anurima earned her law degree from Columbia Law School and graduated magna cum laude from Harvard College. She was born and raised on the South Side of Chicago. Please join me in welcoming Anurima.
I am so grateful to be back with you all in the SABA-DC community, a community which welcomed me like family when I first moved to Washington in 2010, and where I met some of my dearest friends and colleagues and partners in justice. It is a particular honor to join you now in these days of emergence after these last years and months. These last years where we faced multiple pandemics, COVID, continuing systemic racial oppression, deathly widening economic inequality, and disinformation and untruths. Past years that have laid bare where the bones of our democracy are broken and where justice and the connective tissue in our communities has worn away. We witnessed darkness that we could hardly have imagined. That darkness persists, yet we've made it to these days. Days where many within the South Asian community celebrate the end of long, dark journeys and the triumph of light over darkness. It is right then that these are the days when we all gather, for it is our time. A time to rebuild and repair, and to plant seeds grounded in justice and in reflection of our deep histories and our aspirations for the days to come. A time for us not only to be warriors for justice, but carriers and expanders of values, from integrity and compassion to democracy and community. A time to reject the long legacies of divide and conquer, and to embrace a path where we congregate and empower. It is our time to defy those lawyer stereotypes of being liars and be the arbiters and upholders of truth instead, and principles, when so much of what we have come to count on, from the courts to faith in our institutions and process, is being deliberately gutted and undermined. It is our time also to fight for racial justice, actively and with a sense of our history within the United States, from the roaring 20s of 100 years ago, when South Asians fought and lost their bids in the United States Supreme Court to be citizens, in a case like U.S. v. Thind, to our fights to belong and thrive free from hate and discrimination that continue to this very hour. We have much to learn from that history, that we don't win when we go it alone, that learning and listening to one another and standing in solidarity with and within our communities across race, caste, and class, that all benefits and creates a stronger future for us all. Our history also reminds us that it doesn't matter where we stand, as a government lawyer, in-house counsel, domestic violence advocate, real estate transaction lawyer, film producer, private IP lawyer, law firm litigator, or human rights advocate. In any of those places, the fight to address inequality and discrimination and hate is our fight. It's an inside-outside game, and an outside-inside one too. We have many examples from around the world of lawyers who fought for justice and then took part on the inside to make sure that justice was realized. Lawyers such as Ismail Muhammad and Dullah Omar, who fought for the end of apartheid, and then when apartheid fell, served as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and the Minister of Justice in South Africa. And we have examples here among the South Asian legal community in DC every day of associates of law firms who are taking those precious hours outside of the hundreds of billable ones to create an environment for their peers and their partners and the many they serve that is centered in dignity and equity. A workplace where DEI isn't just an occasional performance and buzzword, but is realized every day in acts of mentorship and uplifting one another and of belonging. Or of South Asians who open their doors and provide safe haven and pizza for a night to those who were peacefully protesting their rights and were run down streets of DC. And of South Asians who are advocating to invest in the mental health and address the traumas being experienced by our youth and who work against repeated incarceration and perpetuation of the prison industrial complex. I am grateful to SABA-DC and its leadership for inviting me here and recognizing that service comes in many forms. I served as a civil rights lawyer at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and then led civil rights enforcement in schools and institutions of higher education in the Obama administration, both dream jobs for me. Yet since I left the Justice Department in 2016, I have found and sought out different ways to serve as an advisor to foundations and media and arts organizations, companies, and civil rights and human rights organizations on how to center and embed equity, dignity, and a sense of justice and belonging, of how we stop focusing on the acts of violence and the structures who have led up to those acts and the structures that come after them so we can prevent those acts from occurring again. I've served as a filmmaker and documentarian who realized that we don't tell our stories all that well as civil rights lawyers, so wanted to share stories of sexual and racial violence, of segregation, and of those in particular who dismantle the structures of learned how complex and challenging and rich our religious tradition and practices are around the world, and how deep our religious divides, including in and around South Asia. I have traveled to Iraq, to Vietnam, to Sudan, to Burma, and the Rohingya camps in Bangladesh, where the dreams of families to return home to the shades of mango and jackfruit trees and to educate their children still haunt me. And I've been continually moved and inspired in these days by all of you who have chosen to serve publicly, privately, and in moments witnessed and unwitnessed, but all so deeply felt. It is our time to serve as a moral compass, to give voice to the vulnerable, and to stand our ground so that we can all move forward. Thank you for being part of this community that has given me so much, and that I hope gives you the strength and the sense of togetherness and belonging